Quick disclaimer, we are not investigative journalists. We simply read, watch, and listen to whatever we can to satisfy our curiosity while use this information to form our own personal opinions. Do not take this as investigative journalism. This is simply our own rabbit holes. Hey guys, and welcome to the Crime Cave, where we go down rabbit holes from documentaries, docuseries, and other true crime podcasts. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crime Cave. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Victoria.
How are you today, Victoria?
Pretty good. Just boring week. You doing okay?
I could use like a really good nap, but yeah, otherwise I'm okay. Have you read any weird shit lately?
Actually, yes, I have. A Minnesota man named Alexis Sabet was charged with second-degree murder after he killed and beheaded his girlfriend, America Thayer. Apparently, she wanted to break up with him, and reportedly he told police that she had, quote, went too far. He was seen by multiple people dumping the body and was even recorded by someone. He is currently in jail, and bail is set at $2.5 million.
Okay, first of all, I never realized her name was America. We'll start there. Second of all, that's pretty intense. And third of all, I would not have been that person to record that. Like, I would have been so terrified. I would have run around scared for my life. But kudos to
Well,
them.
to be
I'm glad.
fair, they were recording from inside their apartment or their house.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't like the killer could see them holding a cell phone and recording.
I hope not.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just, I don't know. I'm a little too scared for that stuff.
Mm.
But, okay, well, in the name of husbands being charged in their wife's death, we're going to talk about the A&E docuseries about Laci Peterson. This docuseries originally aired starting in August of 2017. It's a 6-episode series. Before we get into the docuseries, though, let's give you some background on the Laci Peterson case.
Laci Peterson disappeared on Christmas Eve in 2002. She was 8 months pregnant. Laci, Scott, and their unborn son, Connor, lived in Mendoza, California. Her husband, Scott, was their prime and only suspect throughout the entire investigation. Scott was charged and convicted in the disappearance and the murder of Laci and Connor Peterson, and their bodies were discovered on April 13th and 14th in 2003.
This case was a media frenzy, so you probably heard the names Laci and Scott Peterson. The morning of December 24th, 2002, Laci woke up and made herself some breakfast. Scott came out of the bedroom. A little while later, they watched an episode of Martha Stewart. Then Laci took the dog for a walk, and Scott headed to his warehouse to pick up his boat, and he hung out on the lake for about an hour. Then he came home to an empty house. He wasn't very concerned at first. He figured she was with her mom. Scott changed, showered, and had a snack before he called his mother-in-law just to find out she wasn't there. The first call to 911 was placed by the stepfather just before 6 p.m. on the night of Christmas Eve.
The only indications that something was wrong at first to Scott was the dog was outside in their backyard with his leash on, and her car was in the driveway. Scott's search for his wife was aired on every major news station. His emotions were the highlight of coverage for the most part of the conversation. Then it would come to light that he was also having an affair with Amber Frey. Now, their conversations would revolve around lack of emotions and infidelity.
The evidence used in the case that found Scott Peterson guilty in first-degree murder and sentenced to death row were circumstantial. There was no DNA or scientific evidence showing his hands physically committed these murders.
Yeah, that just really bothered me. Like, they had nothing but what seemed like some shit they just came up with to pin everything on Scott.
Okay, with some basic knowledge of this case, we're going to jump into the docuseries. All docuseries pick a side they want to share. This docuseries is on Scott's side for the most part. It was information about the case that they say could show he's innocent. This aired on A&E starting in August of 2017 again.
Yeah, this was more his side, but I feel like they did really well with everyone they interviewed and how they presented all of this other evidence that was just ignored or not brought up at all during the trial.
I agree. Their interview showed how much work Scott Peterson's attorney continues to do in the case to prove the lack of competency and bias that was presented throughout the entire case.
Yeah, there was bias. Like, almost from the get-go, the media was after Scott, and they'd come up with crazy reasons to hound on him, like he's not showing enough emotion or he wasn't really talking to the press. I mean, you can't say anything about someone's emotions or what he was feeling just because he wasn't in front of cameras all the time.
Yeah, they were so biased that within a couple of days of her disappearance, they began investigating if Scott was involved with Kristen Smart. Now we know who murdered her, but hell, Laci was only missing a couple days, and we've already want to pin another missing woman on him.
Yeah, that was just a stretch. Like, we know Scott had already lied to the police about stuff inside their marriage, but I mean, would anyone sitting talking to the cops after his wife disappeared just admit to having an affair? That would just put a target on his back.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why he didn't mention Amber. I do think it would have been in his best interest to not contact her while they were searching for her, though.
Facts.
But anyways, the docuseries deep dived into the tips that were uninvestigated. The biggest being the break-in and the sightings of Laci with her dog. It's sad that they were so hyper-focused on Scott they didn't clear every tip to leave no doubt in anyone's mind. The prosecution knew that there was no scientific evidence and made sure to get their cards right by keeping Amber as one of the last witnesses in their case.
Yeah, and then when the defense had this scientific evidence that would have discredited almost all of the prosecution's points, and then the judge didn't allow it. Like, what the fuck is up with that shit? That makes me question what was going on with the judge in this case to just say, nope, we're not having this scientific evidence.
Yeah, I felt like the entire city of Modesto was just out to crucify Scott. I would have been down to crucify him as well if they were able to prove their case. From the evidence that is readily available, I cannot say without a shadow of a doubt that that man is guilty.
I 100% agree, and in this case where the death penalty was on the table, that needed to be proven.
Absolutely. If I'm going to sentence a man to death, I need to know that there's no way anyone else could have committed this crime. Okay, well, with this docuseries, it is on Hulu. If you want to watch it and give us your opinion, please do. How many cigarettes are we going to rate this series?
So I really loved how this was done, and each episode focused on a different point. It really made you want to continue watching with how they did it and how much new evidence was brought to light. So I'm going to rate this a 19 because this is one of the few docuseries I've seen on the subject that was this well done.
Yeah, so I think this docuseries was done through years of investigating, gathering information. I feel like it wasn't just thrown together. I feel like it helped with the future appeals, and I'm going to say 18 cigarettes. I feel like it revealed the side of the case that never got a voice during the investigation and trial. As of today, Scott Peterson is off death row, and in October of 2020, the California Supreme Court recommended they reopen the case and re-examine the evidence to see if his verdict should be overturned.
Okay, so let's talk about our own thoughts on this case and what we personally found to just not be okay or should have been handled differently. So I'd really like to talk about the media in this case. The media was just out for blood and really made it impossible to have a fair trial, even with moving into another county. Because A, they had this case plastered on every news station at this time. And at that time, the war in Iraq had just started, so everyone was already watching the news, and that really started like the 24/7 news channels for the US. And B, the local coverage was insane. Like one of the reporters in this docuseries said that she had inside sources feeding her knowledge. Well, I understand that's just a part of the media. That just doesn't make any of that okay. So, what about you, Rachel? What do you think?
The news anchors controlled so much of the narrative that it made it impossible to not have some type of feeling for Scott Peterson. The fact that they had this media circus and did not sequester the jury also just played the news up even harder. Like, if you don't have it in the budget to sequester, then put a gag order on the news. One of the anchors, though, even showed the lack of investigating properly when it came to the knowledge of the break-in in this case. The police claim the break-in happened on December 26th. The news anchor states that he stood outside the Peterson home all day on the 26th. He would have seen the break-in if it happened, because it was right in front of where he was standing. This just leads me to be even more upset in how they handled tips from the public in this case. They failed to follow up on so much of the calls they received. I mean, I wonder if the murderer called in and admitted guilt, and they never even looked into it because they didn't feel the need to see any other suspects in this case. Doesn't it feel like the police officers were just turning a blind eye and a deaf ear on anyone else who could have been responsible?
Yes, it does. And there's one thing that made this totally clear. That they were solely focused on Scott. After they arrested two people for the break-in, an officer that worked at the jail heard on a recorded call from one of the people that was arrested for the break-in saying Laci had confronted them and they told her to fuck off or something along those lines. And the person they were speaking to told them to be quiet because someone could be listening. And there was a tape of this. The officer turned that tape over to the police investigating this case, and it was never brought up, and the tape is just gone.
See, evidence going missing or not fully explored is really something that baffles me in this case. It's been reported that Laci was missing limbs with her body being discovered. I mean, I've never chopped off someone's arms before, but I'm sure it's not a clean job. Even if they were already dead and the blood was no longer circulating, Where did all that evidence go? How does Connor's body leave his mother's womb? Where's the umbilical cord and the placenta? How did the baby enter this earth and not leave any evidence of his demise? I just don't understand how they could say it was possible to drop a 150-pound body with cement and weights without capsizing that itty-bitty boat. There's no scientific evidence in connection in this case that sentenced a man to the death penalty. With their opinion, I mean, the hatred of this man who cheated on his pregnant wife, I understand, but the death? Did he murder her? I don't know.
Yeah, there's no way. There was false reporting going around saying that the police said there was a strong smell of bleach in the house. That wasn't true. And then the defense did do an experiment with the same kind of boat, with the same way, like the same weight of the body and the anchors and whatever. The prosecution was trying to say how all of this went down. And they proved that it was impossible to do that without the boat capsizing. So obviously, at the very least, their point of disposal was wrong. And when we have this jury, I mean, I have many issues with the jury and how the selection process went. This was a very biased jury, and to me, it seems like the one juror who wasn't biased was kicked off. And a reporter stated that one of the women jurors winked at Laci's mom before the verdict was read, which just doesn't quite sit right with me. And this same woman, who even though she didn't even think of it, lied on her paperwork about if she'd been involved in any cases, and then went on to call Scott an asshole right after the trial. Like, that's just not normal conduct of a juror in my mind.
Exactly. And I'm sorry, but again, if I'm sentencing a guy to death, I need to know everything has been looked at and presented correctly. I need to be able to sleep at night with my decision. And the fact that this jury was able to convict with the information they were given really scares me about the morals and integrities of the humans involved. To go over each detail of this case that was not looked into, we could be here for hours. But what we did see with the docuseries, I'm beyond shocked that the death penalty was even on the table.
So I just have to say, there was one thing that really, really gave me the creeps in this show, and I really don't have a full answer as to why. But they do talk to at least two women who were involved in a website about Scott being innocent. And like, I'm glad there was some people out there that were biased, but one of these women was at like almost every day of the trial and like inside watching the trial. And for some reason, none of that sat right with me. And I'm not trying to bash anyone here, but I really found one of those women to be a bit creepy. Like, she gave me Mary's a murderer vibes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the fact that they paid for the discovery, which was thousands of pages and typically equals thousands of dollars, and they had no law background or investigative background. It was like they were just obsessed with Scott. And I kind of feel like it was for the wrong reasons. They still run the Innocent for Scott website. Kind of freaking weird.
Ugh, I don't know why. It just, I can't. I can't. I don't know what it is. I just can't.
Yeah, ew, gross.
So I want to talk about our personal thoughts on the death penalty. So I really remember this case vividly from when I was a child, and it was explained to me what the death penalty was because obviously with it being on every news station everywhere they were talking about it. I was like not 8 or 9. No, I was a lot younger than that. Anyway, I was
You
young.
just said you were young.
And when they were talking about the death penalty, I do vividly remember asking my mom like what that was. And my reaction then is still the same now. And the only difference is now I totally understand it. I do not agree with the death penalty at all. I think it's just wrong. And every time I talk to like a good chunk of people that are pro death penalty, they always say the same thing. They always say, "Oh, well, it's always been a thing. It's just it used to be hanging instead of what it is now." Like, okay, just because something's always been this way doesn't make it right. So, Rachel, where do you stand
So for one,
on
if
this?
someone told me it has always been a thing as a response, mine would be would be so is slavery, but we still don't use it. My only problem with the death penalty is that you can't reverse it after it's already been completed. New evidence means nothing when the person you killed for the crime is not here to accept the apology and charge the hell out of you for wrongful conviction. Until we're able to prove that a person has committed a crime and is a risk to other inmates, I don't see how it could be used. There's way too many times where human error, blind eyes, and deaf ears can place a person in a death chamber even if they weren't the person responsible. Serial killers, that you can prove without a shadow of doubt they've murdered 3 or more people, and I mean scientifically you can prove that they did it. There was no one else possible to do this. I don't think that we should put the other inmates at risk who are able to be rehabilitated. I really don't agree with solitary confinement, so if it comes down to the two for the life sentence, I guess I would rather just be executed. I mean, I'm also not going to go around killing a bunch of people, so it won't be an issue. But I'm just saying, like, if it was me personally, I'd rather just be executed. I also don't think I could be on a jury where I had to make that decision. But also, the fact that South Carolina brought back a firing squad just goes to show how Southern people live their life with an eye for an eye mentality.
Solitary confinement is a risky thing by itself because that has also been proven to be super harmful. And yes, these people are criminals. I'm not supporting a murderer. I'm not supporting a rapist. I'm not supporting anything like that. I understand they are criminals. They are bad people. They did something bad. But they are also still human beings. And that just seems to get thrown out of the window a lot. And as a Southerner, we don't all live by that mentality because I think an eye for an eye is fucking bullshit. And people need to put on some big girl panties and accept that sometimes people are going to do bad things, and that doesn't mean we have to do something equally as bad back to them.
I do agree with you that sometimes people make unforgivable mistakes, and we don't have the say in their death. And I guess that's why I could never be on a jury that needs that kind of person. I also think these cages we throw people in for the mistakes shouldn't be placed at risk with someone who lacks self-control. But anyways, tell us your thoughts on the death penalty. Do you think it has its place in the justice system, or do you think it should never be used again? What are your thoughts on Scott Peterson? Do you think he is guilty or innocent man who by the grace of God was removed from death row?
So, my thoughts on Scott. While he is an asshole for cheating on his pregnant wife, like total douchebag, we got it. I don't think he murdered anyone. I think there's two options with this case. One is Scott is totally innocent, and his stupid comment to Amber, which was, it's going to be his first Christmas without his wife. It was just really unfortunate foreshadowing. Or two is he set up Laci to be killed. I personally think he had nothing to do with her death, and they set a target on his back to have a person to blame it all on. Because they already had at least one unsolved case of a missing pregnant woman in the area, and they just really needed to get this solved. So, Rachel, where do you stand on this?
I do not believe he physically committed this murder. We were missing way too much scientific evidence for me to say he committed this crime. He was a douchebag for cheating on his pregnant wife, but it doesn't make him a murderer. If he's involved in her disappearance and murder, he paid someone else to kidnap her and handle the actual task of murdering and dumping the body. This is a far stretch to even make him involved. I'm sure there would have been a money trail they could have followed. It was never talked about if he had random payments off his account. The jury's hatred of his moral compass shouldn't have been able to play a role in the determination of the charges that were pending and the outcome of this case. I really wish they would relook at the evidence with fresh eyes, but that would be admitting failure, and the jurisdiction seems dead set that they did not have bad judgment.
Yeah, I am with you. I wish they would. Well, it seems like they're going to re-examine it, hopefully. So, hopefully in a couple months, maybe in a year, we will have an update on this. And, if I'm proven wrong one day that he did do it, then I will admit I'm wrong.
I mean, I'm going to need some evidence for me to admit I'm wrong, because Nancy Grace blasted lots of lies that she was proven were wrong and has still yet to admit it.
And yep, she was proven, shown she was wrong, and still did not care and has never admitted to this day that she could have been wrong.
So you have to have scientific evidence for me to actually believe now that this man chopped off a bunch of body parts, cleaned up all the blood, and got away with it. Well, I guess didn't get away with it, but they couldn't find it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
That's all we have for today, and we really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check us out on all social media and join our Facebook group, Crime and Chill Fam, so we can all talk about all the crime. Join us next Friday for another episode. Bye.